Welcome to the Quantum Healthy Podcast. I'm Andeea, a licensed addiction counselor, and along with my co-host, Laura Kissmann, a quantum nutritionist, we will be inviting expert scientists, clinicians, survivors, and thrivers to distill their pearls of wisdom attained from applying quantum biology to their fields of research and everyday lives. Our goal is to bring you easy to understand principles and practices about the study of light, water, and magnetism so you can take your health into your own hands. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Quantum Healthy Podcast. Today is such a special podcast because my naturopath is here, Sydne. Sydne, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, I met you through our friend Laura from Toxi Free. For those of you who are not familiar with Sydne or do not follow her amazing Instagram account, I am going to give a little bio on Sydne. So she is a women's hormone and fertility specialist, and she's also certified naturopath and a functional fitness and mobility specialist. She has her bachelor's in clinical dietetics and master's in functional medicine and nutrition. And she is the lead practitioner and owner of Brighter Being Wellness Practice. And her mission is to support women through every sacred season, from fertility to pregnancy to birth, postpartum, and all the way through menopause. So I am so excited to chat with you today. So we want to start with your origin story. You want to tell us a little bit how you became a naturopath and the journey?
Yeah.
You have a lot of things you've certified in, girl.
I know. I'm a junkie in that way. I'm always interested in expanding to get that truly holistic picture of just like health and the human body in general. I was a gymnast growing up, and so I was always interested in performance, athletics. And when I was in my teens, I had a few different things going on that a lot of them ended up being connected and related as it always happens. So I had initially, this is one that I don't typically share as part of my story, but because I don't know, I forget about it, but because we've been talking about, the functional fitness background and everything, it's top of mind. I had some pretty bad injuries. I had a bad knee injury, and then I had two really bad ankle injuries. And we went to, the doctor like you do when you have injuries like that. And what I had with my ankles specifically were chronic sprains that I was never allowing to fully heal. And so this caused more damage, kind of just compounding over time, still doing gymnastics to the point where if I would drop, even just off like a 2 foot ledge or something, my ankles would just jam and hurt so bad. I was getting shocks up my legs. Still doing gymnastics meanwhile because I couldn't stay out of there, couldn't stay out of the gym. But I finally was going in with, I think when I got a sprain, like an actual sprain to the point where I needed to take a break. We went in, they referred to a podiatrist, and we were kind of going all over the place with specialists. And I was told that the amount of damage done to my ankles was going to require reconstruction surgery on both ankles with pins and rods and just like hardware holding me all together. And so we were at this appointment, and I remember thinking, okay, when am I back in the gym then? And so I asked, like, how long would the recovery be? How long until I can be back at gymnastics after getting this surgery? And they basically laughed at me, and they were like, you're not doing gymnastics again after you get this surgery. You'll be lucky to be able to run with this kind of hardware in your ankles. And so I was like, I'm not getting this surgery then. And it was like this whole dramatic thing. The doctor's like, that's a terrible idea. You're going to be, in a wheelchair in your 20s if you don't get this resolved. And like, this is just not my recommendation at all. And I went on my way also against my mom's wishes, without doing the surgery. I for me, it was more of I guess I don't want to say like a selfish thing, but just like I want to do gymnastics. Like that's the only reason I decided that. And we weren't really questioning their recommendations. I just wanted to do gymnastics. And so that was kind of how that happened. I went through PT again, and then I started looking into all these ways that you can bring your ankles and your knees, your joints, and mobility past the point that PT gets you to. Because a lot of times people go through physical therapy and then the therapist sends them on their way and says, okay, you've checked all the boxes, you've met all of our requirements, and you should be good to go now. You don't need us anymore. But then you go back to your sport or you go back to even just daily life and you're still having pain, or you roll your ankle and then you're done for weeks on end. And so I got into all of these functional exercises to help strengthen my ankles. And I had completely flat feet at this point, no arch whatsoever because of the amount of wear and tear I had done. And over the course of, I want to say, 2 or 3 years, I was able to build back up my arch so much that like I have a completely visible arch now. I don't have the same pains that I had before when I was, dropping off of foot high ledges and having these shocks being sent up my ankles. I
Mhm.
still have, I have to keep up with my strengthening. But with that said, that was like one of the first eye-opening moments with the conventional healthcare system where they wanted to go right to cutting me open and putting hardware into my body before problem solving in other ways. And so, yeah, that was one moment where I was like, wow, this is there are other ways. And they're not seeing the full picture all the time when you're just going these conventional routes. And so from there, between all of this, I was also having a lot of other issues. Um, I was having severe gut issues. I had severe fatigue, acne, eczema, and allergies, and then really bad asthma. And so I just felt like this problematic kid. Like, I just have this laundry list of symptoms. Why? What's going on with this? And again, we were seeing all these specialists being sent back and forth. They were prescribing me a different inhaler every 3 months because it would work for a minute and then it would stop working as your body becomes dependent on it. And then we got to a point where we met with our first naturopath, and this was an ND in Minnesota. And she explained to me, I believe I was 15 or 16 at the time, the body is all interconnected. Conventional medicine, modern science and medicine likes to silo all of these different parts of our health. So we have like immune health over here and asthma over here and gut health over here. It's all separate. But she was like, no, it's all connected. And what you're experiencing is actually a systemic issue. It's, you're having this autoimmune response both to food and to, allergens in the air with the asthma going on. And so we did an elimination diet. We did a pretty hardcore gut protocol. I was dealing with a plethora of things there. SIBO, we believe this actually was a reaction to a pharmaceutical that triggered all this immune response stuff going on because it all kind of happened suddenly. Um, so that's where like the development came from. But then, yeah, we addressed it through nutrition, through natural supplements, and I was able to get off of all pharmaceuticals within just a couple of years and totally reverse all of the symptoms that I was having that I was told were incurable, lifelong conditions. And so, yeah, that was another huge moment for me where I was like, wow, there are other ways to look at health in the body. And I want so badly to figure that out, to understand that, and to help other people do that.
Oh, that's an amazing. I didn't realize that part of your journey.
Yeah, yeah, it's I feel like it's common when you get into the health field talking to people who are in
Mhm.
this space. We all have our own really personal stories with it. And I feel like it makes a great practitioner and advocate when you have your own interaction with those kind of issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you chose to go into women's hormone health. Will you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Yeah. That is interesting because I never saw myself in women's health even. Not that I didn't want to be in women's health, but I thought just I was interested in everything. I was just interested in health all around. I was working with a lot of athletes at the beginning. And when I started expanding my training to doing some personal training on the side, I had a lot of female clients coming to me who were anywhere from 20 to 60, and they were struggling with a lot of the same issues. And they were, just coming to me for some like very simple nutrition guidance, macronutrients,
Yeah.
choosing whole foods, and personal training, just like good strength training. And they I just saw these different stages like in front of me with all these different people. There were the girls in their 20s that were dealing with the issues that the women in their 30s were dealing with, and now like that has compounded, and then so on, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
like all the way from struggling with their menstrual cycle when they're 20 to miserable menopause symptoms when they're in their 50s, 60s.
Hmm.
And so I found that really interesting, that those patterns there. And so then I also was digging into all of these food logs I was getting, and something that I realized was that all of these women were on paper under eating. They were giving me food logs with like 1,200 calories per day.
Yeah.
And I was like, is this are they being honest with their food logs? I really thought like that's impossible. Calories in versus calories out. That's just the only equation that matters. And when you use the calculator online, like this person is supposed to be maintaining at 1,600 and they're gaining at 1,200. So how in the world does that make sense? And I did question that for many months, just assuming that people weren't tracking right. And then it just got to a point where it was indisputable that this was happening. And so that got me down all of the rabbit holes with metabolism and just like mitochondrial health, how important that is. And if your metabolism is struggling, if your body has down regulated so much, you can be eating 1,200 calories, gaining weight, yet still nutrient deficient because you're under eating calories, you're under eating nutrients. And so this just spiraled into wanting to work more and more with these kind of cases because it seems so counterintuitive. Women are all told, oh, you just need to keep eating less, you need to keep moving more, you just keep going with that and it'll all work out. And we just don't see that happening in practice,
Hmm.
which is unfortunate because that's what most women are taught to do for their health. And so, yeah, it's a fascinating rabbit hole to get down. And once you see the issues with undereating and nutrient deficiencies, then you start seeing issues with the menstrual cycle, with progesterone, estrogen balance, with estrogen detoxification, even testosterone, cortisol regulation, and that just spirals into all of these issues related to hormonal imbalances and things like infertility, PCOS, even endometriosis, and all the way up through that miserable, I like to call it miserable menopause because I think that resonates with a lot of women who are going through menopause and getting all of the symptoms. And yeah, that's just kind of my journey there with seeing this epidemic of hormone issues in women. And so it's become a big, big passion of mine.
Is
Yeah.
that an epidemic of pregnenolone steal, do you think?
Yeah, yeah.
Which maybe we should talk about and explain. Could you explain what pregnenolone steal is?
Yes, yes. So pregnenolone is a precursor hormone. So the body takes cholesterol and turns that into pregnenolone in the mitochondria. So mitochondrial function is key here. And when we have pregnenolone, this is like the mother hormone. This hormone turns into our other steroid hormones. And so if we are constantly under stress and under just like these chronic inputs of elevating cortisol, the body is going to prioritize using that pregnenolone to create more cortisol at the expense of things like progesterone, which progesterone is a huge one that gets overlooked often. That's one of the main things that I see is a deficiency in progesterone, which is that, very like calming, feel good hormone for women. Um, so yeah, then we see this compounding issue of the chronic stress. We see too much of the cortisol being produced, and then we see oftentimes like an increase in testosterone and androgens. Sometimes the opposite, sometimes a decrease in those things, but a lot of times an increase, and that's where we see things like PCOS.
Right. You don't have a sleep problem, you have a lighting problem. Most modern LEDs flood your home with flickering blue-rich light that keeps your biology stuck in a daytime mode, delaying melatonin and spiking cortisol, and harming your sleep. It's time to get back in sync. Introducing the Better Sleep Bulb by In Rhythm. It's the only flicker-free, infrared enriched, triple mode, dirty electricity free bulb designed to mimic the natural shift from sunlight to firelight. Toggle between 3 modes to effortlessly support your body's need for repair and deep restorative sleep. Stop fighting your biology and start supporting it. Use our code QuantumHealthy for a discount. Click the link in the show notes to transform your home and your sleep tonight. People with PCOS have blood sugar, underlying, but often blood sugar issues too, that they're not aware of. Yeah, along with the low testosterone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the blood sugar issues that kind of work back and forth with that cortisol issue. The blood sugar issues can cause disruption with cortisol patterns, but also disruption with cortisol patterns can also cause issues with insulin sensitivity. And so it just kind of happens in this vicious cycle. And that is super related to, your bread and butter here on this podcast with just like circadian health and light exposure. Because I think when we say chronic stress, a lot of women, a lot of people might think like, oh, like having a stressful job, being a lawyer, just like always having stress in your life. And that obviously plays a role. It plays a huge role for a lot of people. But there are also these stressors that are like biological stressors on the body, physiological stressors like that blue light or like that insufficiency of real natural light or insufficiency of red light, infrared light. So yeah, that's a huge one. I love to kind of unpack all of those different ways that stress can happen on the body. Nutrient deficiencies, that's a stress on the body. Over exercising, that's one that can be under exercising as well. And then also just like exposure to these toxins, underlying infections, that's something that I see a lot. Things like SIBO in the gut or imbalances in the gut, parasites, all heavy metals, all of those are causing stress on the body behind the scenes without it being like a mental stressor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, environmental stress. And then what is the environment? Is it the things outside of our body, like the light and non-native electromagnetic frequencies, or is it at some point that internal stress of like the bacterial overgrowth? See, people might not know what SIBO is, but it's small intestine bacterial overgrowth,
Yes.
and parasites, right? And everything else. Yeah,
Yeah.
so well
Yeah.
explained. Oh, thank you. You really explained. I love how you called it the mother pregnenolone, the mother hormone. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. It is the mother of all of our
Yeah.
steroid hormones.
So you conditions that you support, obviously you mentioned PCOS. I'm gonna assume endometriosis when you were talking about menstrual issues, obviously menopause. That's another whole chapter I'm involved in now.
Yeah.
Um, what about thyroid? Do you have any clients? Are you seeing that?
Yes, yeah. So I see lots of thyroid. That's a lot of times like interconnected with these other issues as well. The thyroid is such a foundational piece to metabolism, to hormones, and so when there's PCOS, look at the thyroid, also look at the gut. Um, when we see things like endometriosis, that is something I don't see that quite so often, and that's not something that we necessarily we're not diagnosing, treating endometriosis, but we're supporting the system alongside endometriosis so that the body can at least thrive with whatever other treatments need to be happening in that scenario, or even get to a point where it is overcoming things on its own, regenerating the body's own innate ability to heal and restore balance is really that's our forte. And then optimizing fertility as well. That's a huge one that we work with. So even if you're not dealing with a specific condition, or you don't have like these diagnoses from your doctor, but you're still struggling with fatigue, with bloating every single day, with one bowel movement per week. This is something we see so often. I think this is probably the most common, is these cases are going into their doctors and they're being sent away told nothing's wrong with them. Their labs are looking normal, and they just are having these symptoms. Maybe it's just, it's just IBS here, like take this home, take this medication, take this antibiotic for 2 weeks. And then the long-term effects of that, they're just not seeing that relief that they need. And so, yeah, that's probably the most frequent case that we're seeing, is people who aren't getting those like clinical diagnoses from their healthcare providers, but still struggling with these symptoms.
Oh, okay. I wanted to dive into with the menopause, since that's something that you've brought up today. Like, what are some of the things, I know it's going to be specific for everybody. They're going to have different, you're going to prescribe different things, but I want to just get, because you've prescribed me things, and it's just so different than, when we go into the doctor, right? And so I wanted you to talk a little bit about that, because you're so brilliant when it comes to just knowing your minerals and your herbs and all the things that can assist. So we can use menopause as an example. We can use whatever one you want as an example, but what does that look like when you like this, maybe some of the testings that you do, and then some of the things you prescribe?
Yeah, so we use a lot of functional testing. We look at blood work if you get blood work from your, primary care provider, or if you already have blood work. We look at those. We can also do some like third-party ordering of blood work, and looking at those from a functional perspective is key, because a lot of times in the conventional space, you can even look this up online if you have blood work on hand that your doctor said looks normal. Go online and look for functional medicine ranges for these different typical blood markers. And you're going to find that those ranges are a lot more narrow, and they're pointing towards different things. And so if we see, I guess like more of a conventional perspective on, say, potassium, you get your potassium tested and it's low. And so then they might recommend that you take supplemental potassium for a certain period of time, and then that's it. Um, where in the more like functional space, where we're actually peeling back the layers, why is potassium low? Is it a thyroid issue? A lot of times potassium's heavily tied to thyroid hormone uptake. And so if thyroid hormone isn't getting into the cells properly, potassium can often become deficient. And so we look at things like that just for an example of like peeling back those layers.
Mhm.
And then how can we support the thyroid so that potassium doesn't become low? And then again, like I was saying with reference ranges, looking at what's the optimal range, because we see these conventional ranges are often based on averages. So what is the average TSH, for example, which is thyroid stimulating hormone? Um, they're they're looking at the average, and if you're within average, they say, "Oh, you're good. You're within the average range."
Which should
But
be
the
like
problem,
0.5 to 5.
I think they go up to 5. Some are different. It depends on the lab. Some are like 4.5 to
But what would
5.
the functional range be?
Up for functional range, you would want to see under 2.5. And so a lot of people are above that, but then they're told like, oh, your thyroid's fine. But actually in functional medicine, we're looking at, how can we prevent, we're seeing the first stages of it. We're seeing the
Mm.
trends. Okay, this is moving higher. So let's tackle this now before it becomes a clinical diagnosis of, hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's. What can we do now? And also, what's the optimal range? Where's optimal function? Because if we're always just looking at the averages for the population, well, the average person is sick. The average person has tons of symptoms they're dealing with every day. They might even have a chronic condition or two.
That's
And
such a good
so,
point.
yeah, it's so interesting. You're like, well, do I want to be average with my blood work? I don't know. Probably not. And so that's where functional medicine comes in. And there's the thing about functional medicine is there's not like one particular range all the time. Like there's not like one board that says, okay, TSH like must be this and sodium must be this for optimal function. There are a lot of different working theories because we're learning the body, and functional medicine really thrives in that like new territory space. We're looking at new research. We're saying, okay, well, like in clinically, I'm seeing people thrive when they're TSH is here or their sodium is here. I just keep using TSH as an
Mhm.
example, but like apply it to any of these lab markers.
Mhm.
Um, so functional medicine is very much on the forefront of all of that. And so that's why you can't find necessarily like standardized ranges everywhere that all look the same. Um, but I think that's a positive thing. It can be kind of frustrating because you're like, well, what's going on here? But yeah, just being on the forefront of that research and looking at different outcomes and how they're actually relating to like patient outcomes and how they're feeling or how they're overcoming certain things. So yeah, that's one thing that we look at is the blood work. We also do functional lab testing. We do a lot of GI maps, which are gut stool samples. This is testing the gut microbiome, so all of the bacteria, fungi, even parasites that might be present in the gut. And that one is super fascinating because you, I love these other functional tests because they're not necessarily like diagnostic tests. So it's not like um, for example, if you take a COVID test, you either get a yes or a no, like a positive or negative. You either have COVID or
Right.
you don't. And so if you don't, but you're still sick, it's kind of like, okay, well, great, I don't have COVID, but what do I have then? What now? Where with functional testing, obviously it's not the same as a COVID test. It's not like an acute sickness test. But that's where it really thrives is being able to get a full picture so that you get good information to work with either way. So you can see, oh, my beneficial bacteria is a little bit low, and my I do have an overgrowth in my intestine, or whatever it is. Maybe you don't have like a positive test for some disease of the gut, but you have information that you can work with to optimize the gut. Because if you're having symptoms, something's off. And so
Mhm.
yes, we love the GI map. And then another one we use is the HTMA hair tissue mineral analysis.
Mhm.
That one is a beautiful test. It looks at minerals and heavy metals from a hair sample. And that is unique because with blood work, it's obviously, it's standard for so many things and it's totally helpful for a lot of things. But what we're looking at in the bloodstream is what's circulating. And the body is always trying to keep the bloodstream at homeostasis. And so if you are, chronically deficient in potassium, the body's going to try and keep as much potassium in the bloodstream, but you might still be deficient in potassium in the tissues, for example. And so that is where the hair test comes in. We don't really care, what's in the hair necessarily because it's our hair, it's kind of external. But what we're looking at with the hair is because your hair is a tissue, we're inferring that that is what's going on in the rest of the tissues of your body. And so, of course, like it's not a liver biopsy, but we can
Right.
we can assume like, okay, so in the tissues, you are low potassium, super high calcium, super high sodium, or whatever that might look like for you. And from that, we're able to see these different, like how these different systems are operating. So some common ratios that we look at there, calcium and phosphorus, that is, those two minerals modulate the nervous system. Calcium is more like on the calming, down regulating side of the spectrum, where phosphorus is more on like the upregulating, stimulating side. And so we want both. We want to have like our fight or flight when we need it. We want our cortisol up when we need it, but then also we need our rest and digest. We need our cortisol to come down when that's called for. And so for for these two minerals, if we have, say, a toxicity in calcium, like you're eating so much calcium from, for whatever reason, this is not a typical case where someone's eating a ton of calcium, but
A
it could
cheese addict?
happen. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Um, yeah, and usually in this kind of case, it would be more like you're taking a multivitamin
Oh, yeah.
and a prenatal and something else, and they all have like insane amounts of calcium in it. I
Mhm.
rarely see toxicities in minerals just from diet alone. Usually it's that. But I guess if you eat enough cheese, maybe it could happen. We can test that one out. But
They
then,
would be struggling with the calories in, calories out.
yeah,
I'm
right.
sure. They'd probably have other issues.
Right, yeah, yeah. Digestion might be a little rough. I don't know. Um,
And weight. Yeah.
Yes, right. Yeah, so yeah, with the calcium, if that's super high for whatever reason, that can actually push the body into a kind of like what we would call like a chronic parasympathetic state, which means I don't like to use rest and digest because those are two like really positive things. Where
Right.
this extreme state is not necessarily positive. You're like stuck, you're sluggish, you're fatigued, common in those burnout cases. And
Okay.
so the mineral imbalance can push you into that state, but then also on the flip side, being in that state can cause the mineral imbalance. And so if, it might not have anything to do with your calcium intake at all. It could be that you worked like crazy doing shift work for 3 years and you never took a break, and then you finally hit a wall and totally crashed, totally got into that burnout state, and now you're like, I'm so fatigued, I can barely get myself moving ever. Nothing is helping. And that's where on a test we would see super high calcium and maybe low phosphorus. And again, it's not because of, the amount that you're eating or intaking necessarily. It's because your environment and your body's response to things shapes your mineral status. And so that's why I really love that hair tissue mineral analysis test, because we can look at it from that perspective. Some other few good markers that are on there, the nervous system ratio, and then we have a cellular balance ratio, so sodium and potassium that really modulate our fluid balance, and then electrical signaling. And then we have our thyroid ratio, calcium and potassium, that I already kind of mentioned, but super high calcium or very low potassium or both are related to that hypothyroidism or that underactive thyroid state. I see that most often, although there are a couple cases where you can be on the opposite end and be in that more hyperthyroid, subclinical hyperthyroid state.
Mm.
So I say subclinical because a lot of times with the thyroid, people are going into their doctor and saying, I have all of the symptoms for hypothyroidism. Every single one, checking every box, the fatigue, the weight gain, the constipation, dry skin, brittle hair, nails, skin, everything. And they get their thyroid checked, but their thyroid hormones circulating in their bloodstream are normal or within conventional normal ranges. And so they aren't, their symptoms aren't addressed when really what's happening is a subclinical suppression of thyroid function through this mineral imbalance. And so calcium is what helps get that thyroid hormone into the cells. And so it can calcium can down regulate thyroid hormone getting into the cells. And then potassium is kind of an end product of that energy production from thyroid hormone getting into the cells. And so if potassium's low, it's a picture of, okay, the body is not necessarily uptaking enough thyroid hormone into the cells. And so these people have, this hypothyroidism technically, systemically, but it's on a subclinical level. And that's where it can be addressed through things like nutrition, like working on mineral balance, really focusing on the environment, and more like natural treatments for the thyroid, things like red light therapy. Maybe even some NDT, the natural desiccated thyroid, as a supplement, and then going from there before it turns into this disaster of, very extreme clinical hypothyroidism.
I actually had experience with that.
Did you?
Yeah, one of my kids was subclinically hypothyroid and not presenting, like
Wow.
underweight, if anything, but like
Okay.
definitely underweight, but had the fatigue,
Yes.
and then it showed up. It actually showed up just slightly as hypo, and he was able to correct it just with doing the
Wow.
exact same things. He didn't do red light therapy, but just a little bit of, you call it NDT, like natural desiccated thyroid. Yeah.
Yes.
My
Can
own
you
journey
just
is,
talk about that?
yeah.
Um, the desiccated thyroid. Why would you take that?
And
I
what
just
is it?
love the link of healing. You
Yeah.
take what you take the same what you want healed. I'm saying
Yes.
that wrong. You
No,
explain.
absolutely. No, you're saying that right. The like heals like
Yes.
phenomenon. Yes. Oh, it's so cool. I think there's a lot of layers to it that we can't even comprehend. On a surface level, the thyroid gland contains the nutrients and also a little bit of the hormones that are needed for the thyroid to function optimally. And so, what has been done historically for, thousands of years is in these even just like tribal settings, if someone was dealing with an ailment of some sort with a certain organ, they would reserve that organ for that person and like have them eat it. And so if they were having heart issues, they might eat desiccated heart, or not even desiccated, they might just eat it raw, right from the animal. They might dry it. Um, and then now through science, we know like, oh, CoQ10
I was just
and a
gonna
bunch
say,
of, yeah, like a bunch of other heart supporting nutrients and compounds are in the actual heart organ of these animals. And so, yeah, with the thyroid, it's taking, usually they take it from pigs. They do pig thyroids for whatever reason. I think it's more bioidentical to us.
right.
But I think they also do bovine as well commonly, and they will take the thyroid gland, desiccate it so it's dried and in a capsule form so that you don't have to go eating thyroid hormone for dinner or thyroid glands for dinner. And then that can be a really effective even treatment for hypothyroidism. So clinically, they have actual pharmaceutical grade NDT where you can get it prescribed from your doctor. if they're a great doctor and they're in the know on the NDT. And so that so yeah, it's even used clinically, but then on a more mild level, you can use just like I think Heart and Soil supplements, they just put one out there too. Just, it's food, but in capsulated form so that you're getting those nutrients in and a little bit of those trace hormones.
That's
Mhm.
for those who don't know Heart and Soil, that's Dr. Paul Saladino's company. He's the doctor that lives in Costa Rica and surfs every morning, but wrote the carnivore code. But he has, he has evolved in his journey, and he's not strictly carnivore anymore. And it's interesting. He's been, developing these products, and he's a lot of women. My understanding is a lot of women and men are having better hormonal health, just from probably changing their lifestyle and emulating a little bit how he lives his life, but also improving their diet and taking these, would you call that a glandular?
Yes, yeah. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it's so fascinating. I love that he's doing that. He's just like anyone on the internet or just like anyone in general sharing their personal story. There's always going to be like extremes or, very specifics for that person. So I think he gets a lot of maybe unnecessary hate from his whole journey. He was hardcore carnivore for a while and then he evolved um, you know, into a
Was it
next
animal based?
phase. Yes, animal
Animal
based,
based, yeah.
just an evolved phase of his healing journey, being able to tolerate fruits now and benefit from them. And that's something that I've been talking about a lot lately with people is the every phase of the healing journey looks different. And so when someone is doing something that seems extreme, sometimes that's what's needed for that person in that moment. And then also, it's maybe not the right thing for them long term. And you can see that perfectly in his journey. He even talks about it a lot. I've heard on some of his podcasts or content, he talks about how when he was so sensitive with his gut, having all these eczema flare-ups, I think he had some other autoimmune issues going on. He literally couldn't tolerate a single plant food. He had to go strict carnivore to get by, to survive. And then those symptoms resolved. And then after a few years, his thyroid started going a little out of whack. And he had been, carnivore keto for I don't even know how many years. And
Mhm.
so now you're in a spot where if you've healed the part of the gut or the part of the body, the system that was requiring carnivore for a period of time, but now you're getting to a stage where that is no longer best suiting you and you need to kind of evolve with that. I just think that's such an important message and framework way to
Yeah.
look at the healing journey.
And just to
Yeah. I
keep
used to
evolving.
go ahead, Laura.
Oh, just to say exactly what you said, like you don't realize that you are still evolving, and you need to pay attention to the symptoms, which are actually signals of something going on, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to think that I was always searching for the diet I'm supposed to be on that's for me and that it was going to be forever.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And yeah. And now, yeah, now after going through my own journey, learning everything I know and learning from you, Sydney, as well, I like those things are tools and might be, you know, for a certain point in time, just like you were saying with Paul's example. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
not a forever thing. And we tend to
Right.
like these dogmatic, their communities, and then everybody's believing in the same thing. So it's yeah, just
Yeah.
anything that's dogmatic now, I'm like,
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
question it. But it's
Right.
not that, and I'm not saying, like using carnivore an example, like I was a carnivore and it served me for a short time until it didn't,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yeah, I love that you say that. Yeah, it serves you for a specific need and then it doesn't and you need to change and listen to your body and go from there. And
Mhm.
yeah, I learned this actually like you inspired me so much, Andeea, just learning from you. You kind of sparked my initial investigations, I guess, into just more into the quantum health space and learning how everything it's like a big puzzle and you need the right pieces at the right time. And if you're just trying to, shove square pegs in round holes, it doesn't work. And I felt that way for a long time. It just doesn't seem right intuitively to, there's one right way to eat and we all have to find it. That doesn't really feel right, and I don't think that's anyone's experience. They don't just, stumble upon the perfect right way to eat and then they're good for forever for the rest of their life. And so, yeah, and then my interest in circadian rhythms, and I was fascinated by it, and then you introduced me to all of these other subtopics and like deeper into that, and I'm still just falling down that hill. Just like, oh my gosh, there's so much
You're
here.
in the rabbit hole with us now.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's so
I call
important.
it I call it quantum nutrition, basically, but
Yes.
yeah, you
Yes.
get into deuterium
Hmm.
and then seasonal food. And now I'm just gonna throw it out there because I think the next thing I'm diving into is the whey. Have you guys read the whey yet?
I haven't.
No, it's Joel Green. We got to get him on the podcast. But
Okay.
yeah, lots of people are talking about his book because it's even more like it sounds like it's seasonal eating, but there's even a deeper element to it with fasting.
Oh,
But yeah, there's so much because really, if you look back in history, they didn't have a predictive diet at all, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
know.
they
I was
didn't
just thinking that
they
when
didn't have
Sydney said
food.
that, I was like, that's not how they would have done it.
I know. So
Yeah.
we just none of us know it all, really. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, and
Right.
Heather Shepard, I just heard a really interesting podcast. I keep meaning to reach out to you, Andeea, to tell you about it. But Heather Shepard, who lives on a farm and has her own dairy, has her dairy cows and has pigs. I've lived for like 5 days on the farm,
Oh,
and
cool.
she's coming out with some interesting topics on She talked a lot about calcium and how she thinks we need a lot more dietary calcium than we ever
Yeah.
thought before, and how the fact that the ruminants like cows that have what is it more they don't have more stomachs, they have more um compartments in
Yes.
their stomachs,
Yeah.
Yeah.
um and how they can actually transform um some of the PUFAs, the
Yes.
polyunsaturated fatty acids,
Hmm.
whereas the other animals can't. And
Yes.
you made some comment about like eating, if you're eating chickens that are fed, and it's because of what they're fed. And if you
Yeah.
give the same diet to the cows as the pigs and the chickens,
Hmm.
pigs and the chickens, it'll taste, in the end, you end up almost, it's the equivalent of having a tablespoon of canola oil. You might as well just
Yeah.
have it canola oil.
Yes.
Whereas
There's
from the
that saying,
cows,
you are what you ate.
Yeah.
yes. But the ruminant animals, so that's like elk and cows and I'm trying to think what other animals, they transform it. It's not the
Yeah.
same. So it's so
So
interesting. And
incredible.
then I go back to carnivore and go, well, why have all these people gotten results? And they're eating like just they're not even they're what I call it CAFO, confined animal feeding operations, like
Mm,
your
yeah.
standard farm, cows like and steaks at your grocery store, and they're
Yeah.
getting results. Is it because they're eating it from a ruminant versus the
Yeah.
organically fed chicken? But
Yes.
it was organic soy and it was
Uh-huh.
Anyway, I think, do you
Yeah.
know more about, you've lived on a
Yeah.
farm, you've lived on several farms, is my understanding. Can you share
Yes.
anything with your insights?
Yeah, yeah. Fascinating about, yeah, the ruminant animals, how they can like literally transform basically like plant matter and compounds that are not favorable for us to be eating into one of the most nourishing foods for us to be eating. It's
Yeah.
just insane. And yeah, with the whole, you see like the whole wellness space for a long time, which I see it evolving now for sure, but for a long time, the message has been eat chicken and fish,
Right.
nothing else. Like, don't eat red meat, it's inflammatory, avoid eggs, cholesterol, all of that. And so now we have all these people thinking chicken's always better. They're always eating chicken. And I'm not against chicken, especially if you're getting it from a really good quality source. But yeah, it's definitely something to think about if we're going from eating, a mix of things and, some red meats and some wild game and whatever it is, to now just eating chicken and just eating fish and that's it. This is creating that imbalance in the body where we see so much more omega-6 intake, the polyunsaturated fatty acids, and then this can drive inflammation in the body. So yeah, I always recommend if you're getting, if you are on a budget and you're like, I literally can't afford to get grass-fed or, farm to fork kind of food yet. Um, if you buy conventional red meat, it's, there are some nasty stories out there, but it's going to likely be better than getting conventional chicken because of how the chickens are raised and treated. And of course, we always recommend like higher quality, and the system as a whole really is what should be held accountable for the poor quality that we're seeing in all of these animals. But at the end of the day, some regular, conventional red meat is going to be better than a Hot Pocket or, other Pop-Tarts, whatever it is. So yeah,
Breakfast food.
yeah. And then like kind of just that like order of operations there is like if you buy one thing, one kind of meat that's organic or like higher quality pasture raised, switch your chicken first or switch your poultry first, or maybe even just reduce your intake of those things while you're focusing on more of like the ruminant animals. Yeah, something interesting that I saw on farms, it's crazy how much the cows are able to synthesize into these nutrients. I don't know, I'm just still mind blown by it, seeing cattle up close eating all these things that we literally would get sick from eating because it's like raw foliage like that. And so yeah, it's very interesting. Um, Pigs are another that like kind of like chickens, it's you are what you ate like to a T. Where yeah, with the cattle, I think like you said, elk, sheep, what else?
What about lamb?
Yeah, lamb.
Lamb and goat, are they ruminants?
I I think goat.
I have it in the
I'd
can.
have to check on goat. I actually am not sure about goat. I know lamb is. Um, yeah, I would have to check on that. But
This episode is sponsored by VIVARAYS, the only eyewear company that truly understands your biology. VIVARAYS are advanced blue light glasses designed with circadian biology in mind. Unlike typical blue blockers, they filter light in harmony with your body's natural rhythms, helping you sleep deeper, feel more energized, and protect your long-term health. We love companies that support biology-backed wellness, and VIVARAYS is leading the way. Use code QuantumHealthy at vivarays.com to save 15% and support your sleep, focus, and natural energy the way nature intended. Enjoy this episode.
so cool. So
Yeah.
interesting how nature works in those ways. Bison is also ruminant.
Bison, yes. Thank
Yeah,
you. Bison,
bison.
definitely
Yep.
a big one.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, we is there anything more? I mean, you really help pregnant women as well, right? The whole
Yes.
perinatal care,
Yeah.
support through. I've read the preconception, pregnancy, and the postpartum phases.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that a
Yeah.
beautiful part of your business?
Yes, absolutely. So I have a really good friend, mentor, fellow practitioner. She's a doctor of Chinese medicine, Dr. Sonia Murray. She and I, we when we first connected, I had this framework. Like I was saying at the beginning, when I saw all of these women like at different stages of their lives dealing, the 30-year-old with infertility had dealt with the same symptoms that the 20-year-old with like, irregular cycles and acne and all that was dealing with. And then you move to like the 40s, 50s and it's, maybe the endometriosis or it's fibroids or then like getting into miserable menopause. I just like kept seeing these different phases of life and I was like, "Oh, I want to emphasize that and work with people in these different women in these different stages to help them find a different way to help them with nourishing their body properly, really at the basis of it all. And that nourishment through, food, movement, sunlight, not just food itself. But then also stopping that trajectory in its tracks, because I just couldn't help but think, if this person only had the help and resources they needed in their teens or in their 20s when they first started having symptoms, could all of these things in this cascade been avoided? And so we were chatting about that, me and Dr. Sonia, and her like framework in her practice, she mainly does acupuncture. She was telling me how she works with women in every sacred season. And I was like, bing, that's it right there. That's so beautiful. The sacred seasons of a woman's life, because we go through, I mean, men's health is interesting too, but it's not anywhere near the beast that women's health is, with all of these different life changes that women go through in their physiology. And so that time when women are first getting their cycles and coming into their fertile years, that is such an important sacred time for them to be optimizing their health, so that when they get to the point where they want to conceive, it works out for them with ease. And obviously there are other factors at play, but a lot of times things like infertility, or even just struggling to conceive, or maybe you do conceive, but you have a very symptomatic pregnancy and complications. A lot of these things are often due to nutrient deficiencies, even, light imbalances, hormonal imbalances. And so optimizing at that first stage can just like enter into that next stage with ease. And then, of course, looking at those times in the prenatal, preconception, pregnancy itself, and then postpartum as well, all of those times are very crucial for women to be getting as much nourishment as possible. And so this is where this is, I think, where most of my passion lies, is in those seasons, just making sure that the body's optimized so that they can thrive through each one of those seasons. Because pregnancy isn't a disease. Postpartum isn't a disease, but people experience all these symptoms as if it is. And so I think people often overlook the importance of taking care of their health when they're in, their pregnancy season or postpartum season. And it's the opposite. Women need so much nourishment and support in those times. And so, yeah, I have a huge passion there. And then, of course, leading into that menopause, just like it's so not understood yet, menopause as a whole. I don't understand it. I don't think anyone does. It's such a different beast to work with, and it can be really beautiful to have women who have struggled with symptoms their entire lives actually like coming into their bodies and realizing like, oh, wow, okay, like I have this gut infection and this food sensitivity that I've had for 15 years. Now I'm able to eat these things again, and the hot night sweats and the hot flashes that I've been getting, like, oh my gosh, they've cut in half. So cool to work with that season of life, because that's underrated too. It's how women are living every single day, and they're still expected to, if they're still working, show up to work like normal, or, clean the house, grocery shop, do all the normal things.
It's true, because back in the day, of our grandparents, let's say, like people of my age, I'm about to turn 60 this fall, I would be retired,
Yeah.
right? And I
Yeah.
wouldn't be having pregnetal on steel syndrome happening,
Mhm.
and wondering why I'm not so much hot flashes, but running warm.
Right.
But here's a question for you, and then talking to my doctor about these symptoms, and she's now recommending bioidentical hormones. Do you I don't think you prescribe that, but do you have a soft spot for them, or are you as a naturopath thinking, no, we really need to go back and figure out what is causing it? Or do you see a place for them at all?
Yes, yeah. I kind of feel both things that you described. I feel both very very strongly. So yeah, I don't prescribe anything. I'm not a prescribing practitioner. And so I am simply working with the natural things, the herbs, the minerals, the nutraceuticals. And so I do work alongside women who are getting HRT, who have gotten it before coming to me, who are curious about it. And I newly am guiding women towards and referring them to getting HRT in menopause, bioidentical, always.
Right.
And yeah, so I think for a long time I felt very opposed to it for most cases because I'm thinking, what's at the root of the hormonal imbalances? One, two, is this natural? Is this what's supposed to happen in menopause? Are we supposed, not necessarily the symptoms, but like, to what degree are we supposed to see estrogen, progesterone, testosterone fall? And that's just how it is. So that was something that I wrestled with for a long time. And now seeing some of the outcomes that some women are having with some bioidentical hormone replacement, I think it's a really good tool for the right person, especially because when we look around at the environment that we live in, I think I said this earlier, it ideally we would have addressed the hormonal imbalances and the dysfunction when you were 30, and then you wouldn't have it when you're 40, 50, 60, 70. But then that didn't happen. And so now we're here. Now what do we do with the tools that we have? And if we look around at our modern world, it's likely that you've been, nutrient deficient at one point in your life, or maybe your whole life until now. Maybe, just maybe, you've been exposed to some toxins. Probably. I'm gonna guess you have. And you've probably had to work at a computer. You own a cell phone, you have a TV, you might have a cell tower that your phone connects to. So there are all these factors that we don't necessarily have a ton of control over in our new environment. So yes, of course, we should be optimizing how we can, not sleeping with the Wi-Fi router under our bed or, things like that. But to a certain degree, we're in this new world where like we can't unfortunately take down the 5G tower down the street.
Yeah.
We might get there, but we can't yet. So what are we to do? And yeah, I definitely am newer to exploring it, but I have supported women for a while that have been getting their HRT. And my focus is what can we do naturally to augment this?
Mhm.
And then also looking at like, are we working with the right provider to get the right kind of HRT? There are a lot of different methods, a lot of different types. We want to make sure it's bioidentical, not, all synthetics. We want to make sure that you are actually getting progesterone. That's one that is often overlooked because they used to prescribe back in the day a different type of synthetic progesterone, the progestins, and those were causing a lot of issues in women, even linked to cancer. And so now there's this like collective fear of progesterone, even though it's like one of the most important pieces when it's the right kind, when it's like
Right.
bioidentical.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, making sure you work with a provider that can provide those things in the right way.
That's awesome. Okay, so we are getting close to the end here, very close. So we want to ask, you have such compassion for all of the things that you do. I really enjoyed this conversation. We always ask people, what does quantum healthy mean to you? So we'd like to ask you that.
Yes. Okay. Quantum healthy means looking at things from like multiple layers, from every layer. That's what first comes to mind for me because that's when I think quantum, I just think of like how everything is layered, everything is connected, and things are mirrored in those different layers as well. And so we're looking at, I guess from a higher level perspective, what I look at is like circadian rhythms and then menstrual rhythms and then the seasonal rhythms as well. And then also like the life seasons. So it's like we have our daily rhythms and then we have our monthly rhythms and then we have our seasonal rhythms through the year. And then we have our seasons of life going from, like preconception, pregnancy, postpartum, menopause. And it's just like, I don't know, it's a visual in my head of just all of these layers that are interconnected. And when we look at each one of them and optimize, it just translates to every other layer in the whole spectrum.
The whole system. Awesome. Thank you, Sydne. Now, if people are wanting to work with you, where can they find you?
Yes, so you can find me at brighterbeingwellness.com. That is the main hub there, and you can pretty much find everything else through there. But on Instagram, I'm at Brighter Being Wellness, and then Substack, I think it's just Brighter Being on there.
Okay. We'll have it linked.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, and that's it. We are taking on new clients, and again, we work with mostly women through all of those seasons, but we also do a little bit of pediatrics. So we do some mom-child duos, which is super fun. And then we also have worked with some couples, so getting both the women's and men's fertility optimized for, even just like household health, but fertility, conception, all of that. Yeah, thank you guys so much. You two you're so aligned, and I really enjoyed talking to you, and I'm excited to keep in the loop with both of you.
Awesome.
For sure. Andeea always lets me have the last word, Sydne. So just want to thank you on a few different levels here. Your journey first. You went through a lot of injuries. We should talk offline because so much you talked about resonated. I did a little bit of gymnastics, but my injuries came later in life, and you and I have a real interest in the knees over toes guy and functional fitness, and so very exciting. But I'm sorry that you did have to go through that, and to the extent of getting offered this drastic surgery. And
all the part of the journey.
Oh yes, but it does spark, right? It sparks that interest and a passion, life purpose. And so
For sure.
you mentioned, I love this term, that you were a junkie. Thank you for being a junkie, like in terms of holistic, you're interested in holistic medicine. And Andeea and I spoke about this just before you came on. She said, Laura, I have to prepare you when you actually see Sydne. So for everybody who's listening, you need to actually watch the YouTube, because you're going to see, you just have to look in her eyes, and she is a brighter being, and it's,
that's so sweet.
So, and maybe it comes from so many things you're doing, but living on farms, and I know that you travel in a van, and you just have a very beautiful life, it seems. And
thank you.
Thank you for reminding us that the body's interconnected, and that we need to restore balance, that we need to focus on optimal, right? Not the averages. I really loved how you explained that with the labs. And just taking, you've studied a lot, like naturopathy and functional medicine, and now we're just so grateful that you're layering on quantum biology, and you're nourishing probably so many women and men too, and children in so many ways, and taking them through all their sacred seasons. So for all that, thank you so much for taking the time with us today on Quantum Healthy.
Thank you both so much.
Yes, thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for listening to the Quantum Healthy podcast. We hope you found some value in this information, and if you feel inspired, please share it and leave us a 5-star review. This will help us reach so many more people. If you want to connect with Laura, you can find her at laurakissmanwellness.com and Andeea at andeearay.com. Links are below in the show notes. Now, go find some sunlight and embrace your own quantum healthy.